12 learners, welcome to Agricultural Science lesson. My name is Amanda Fumba. We are starting with Agricultural Sciences. We are doing revision as we know that we are about to write our final exams. We are done with our prelims. Therefore, our focus, it will be divided into two, as we know that we have two papers. We know that we have paper 1, and we must know which content must you expect on your paper 1 and which content must you expect on your paper 2. So let's go together. So paper 1 topics, you need to know which topics are you supposed to deal with in your paper 1. As you can see, we have topics that only focuses on paper 1. The first topic is about animal nutrition, and some they refer to it as animal feeding. It starts with alimentary canals. We do components of feed. We talk about the types of feeds. We talk about the quality of feed, where we have calculations, whereby you have to look at digestible coefficient. We have to look at nutritive ratio. We have to look at Pearson square method. And we also have to look at the feed flow program. And if you can see on the slide, we have section A. And section A, as we know that our paper has got 2 sections. On section A, you are expected to answer question 1, which is out of 45 marks. In that 45 marks, you have the multiple choice questions, which is out of 20 marks. You have the matching items, where you are going to be given 2 columns, column A and column 2, and which is 10 marks. We also have to look at terminology, which always give problems, but we need to work hard in order to get what is expected by the examiners. And then the last part is term replacement, whereby you're going to be given the incorrect term, which will be underlined, and therefore you are expected to give the correct term. It's not a matter of replacing, or it's not a matter of saying true or false. If increase is underlined, if decrease fits in, then you replace with the decrease. So we are no more dealing with true or false. Same applies when it says you are supposed to provide the correct term or phrase. Candidates, you'll find them in their scripts writing term or phrase, whereby you are expected to bring the term, because it's about the terminology, agricultural terms. Okay, let's continue. Then section B, but section B we are not going to focus on. We'll only look at on the next presentation. So question 2, question 3, and question 4, it has got 35 marks each. So we have 35 marks. Let's correct this one. It's supposed to be 35 times 3. Question 2 is out of 35 marks. Question 3 is out of 35 marks. And also question 4 is out of 35 marks, which means in total section B is out of 105 marks. And then you add your section B together with your section A, then it gives you 150 marks, which tells you that when you write your paper 1, you are writing for 150 marks. Let's check the next slide. So today our focus will only be on paper 1, what is expected. That's what we are looking at. Paper 1, as I already indicated, it has section A and section B, but let's find out what exactly to look at in your section A. Paper 1 in total has got 4 questions, as it is indicated, 4 questions. So section A has got 4 subtopics or sub-questions. So we have 1.1, which is out of 20 marks, as it is indicated, which is multiple choice questions. In multiple choice question, you are given varieties of questions where 4 possible answers you are given, and you are expected to choose only the correct statement, and not writing the correct statement, only writing the letter, because the instruction will indicate you don't rewrite the statements, we only write the correct letter as the instruction will indicate. And what makes this multiple choice questions. Multiple choice question will be from three main topics. We know that in our paper one, if you go back to the previous slide, if you can go back to our previous slide, it has got 8 marks. It will be for animal nutrition, and another 8 marks will be for animal production, protection, and control. And the 4 marks in order to have 20 marks for our multiple choice question. It will be from animal reproduction. So as you study, as you prepare for your exams, you must know in your question 1.1, you are expecting 8 marks which come from animal nutrition, 8 marks which come from animal protection, production, and control. And the last 4 marks, it will come only from animal reproduction. Then let's go back. If you check terminology, which is 1 point, let's also do the corrections, which is 1.3, because match columns, according to the new exam guideline, it has changed. So if you look at 1.3, it will be terminology. You're expected to give agricultural terms. So 4 marks comes from animal nutrition, 4 marks come from animal production, protection, and control, and 2 marks come from reproduction. Same applies when you go to your match columns, which is 1.2. And in your paper one with match columns, you know you are given 2 columns with A and B and another column with description, whereby it will tell you must provide your answer as A only or B only, or you have to indicate if both statements are correct. And you don't just write both, you write both A and B. If there is no statement that is correct, you only write none. The instruction will be in your question paper. So it also have 2 from animal reproduction, 2 marks, and 2 marks will come from animal nutrition and animal production, animal protection, and animal control will be 2 marks, and the 6 marks will come from animal reproduction. And the last one, which is term replacement. Term replacement, 1 mark comes from animal reproduction, animal nutrition, and 1 mark from animal protection control, animal protection. And the last 3 marks, it comes from animal reproduction. If you check from animal reproduction, you have 15 marks. If you check from animal protection, control, and protection is 15 marks, and also animal reproduction is 15 marks, which gives you 45 marks. Then let's move to section B. In agricultural science, all questions must be answered by you. You don't choose what to answer, but you can choose which ones to start with, but don't break your questions. Then let's go to section B. Section B, you are supposed to answer all the questions. Then question 2. Question 2 will deal with only animal nutrition out of 35, as the first slide entails. Then we have to look what content must you prepare for your animal reproduction or animal nutrition. Remember, nutrition, it has got to do with feeding. It has got to do with food. So what to prepare? So you start with the structures. What structures? The alimentary structures, the digestive system of the 3 farm animals that we deal with in grade 12, which means we deal with cattle, we deal with chicken, which we also refer to it as fowl, we also deal with pigs. So all those digestive systems, we are expected to know their structures. And those structures, you must be able to know, you must be able to label the structure. You are expected to know what that organ does, which means you must know the functions. If you say in the alimentary canal, there are teeth in the mouth. So what do they do, the teeth? Then now we also have to look at the adaptability, how that organ is adapted to do its function. How is it able to do its function? If, for example, we talk of a gizzard, how is it able to grind food? Because we know food is grinded by teeth, but in the gizzard, there are no teeth. So how is it adapted? So that's why we have to look at adaptability, and examiners will talk about the suitability. So you need to understand the terms. So in the structure, you must know the structure, you must know the parts of the structures, you must know the functions, and you must know the adaptability. Then the second subtopic, you have to look at the components of feed. The feed that we are going to give to animals, what is it made up of? Then you'll go and look back to your 6 components of feed. Water, why there must be water, why minerals, why proteins. But we'll deal with it on the next presentation. Then this third one, the types of feeds. We know we deal with different types of animals. We know we have the ruminants, we have the non-ruminants. So the feed they eat is different. That's why you have to look at the types of feeds. So we have to look, if I can remind you, we look at refugees, we look at concentrates. Which ones can we give to ruminants and which one can we give to non-ruminants or monogastric? Then you also have to look at calculations. In agricultural science, paper 1, we have 5 calculations, and you need to know 5 of them. In your exams, you can be assessed on 3 out of 5, and you won't know which ones. That's why it is important to know 5 of them. Then the first one, if I can remind you, is about DC, which is digestibility coefficient, where we want to know how much food is digested and absorbed by the animal. Then we also look at the nutritive ratio, which we also refer to it as NR. How much ratio must you give to that animal in order to digest and absorb the feed? We also have to mix feed, because as humans, we must have a balanced diet. Also, the animals must have the balanced diet. So you don't only give carbohydrates. There must be protein so that the animals, they can also grow. If you want animals to be fed, you must know how much parts of the feed must you mix in order to make that animal to be fed. And we also have to look at, then on the calculations, as I was saying, we have 5. We look at DC, we look at NR, we look at Pearson square. We also look at energy values of feed, where you are given 4 types of energy values: the gross energy, the digestible energy, the metabolic energy, and the net energy. Which energy is available? We're talking of for which energy is available. You need to look at that. And the last one, we look at the feed flow planning or feed flow program. As a farmer, you must have a plan that an animal will have food throughout the year. Let's look at section B, but now we look at question 3. What question 3 entails? Question 3 we are looking at animal production, animal protection, and animal control for 35 marks. Which content must you study as you are preparing for your exams? We look at production systems and farming systems, and you must differentiate between production systems and farming systems. We also look at housing and equipment used in this production system. Which housing is good for ruminants? Which one is good for non-ruminants? Which type of animal must I keep in this housing? And which equipment must I use for feeding the animal? In which shelter? Remember, there is a difference between a shelter and a housing. So you go back to your exam guideline and note what is expected of you. So animal shelter, we need to look at various purposes. For example, we must look at adverse conditions, whether the climate is good, whether the temperature is good or bad. In which shelter will you keep the animal? When it is hot, you know that animals, as you also need a shade. The animals, they also need a shade when it is hot. And you also need a shelter for that feed flow program to keep your feed, because you are planning for 2 years to come. So your animals must always have food. So you must have a storage for those feed sheds. And the other topic or the other subtopic that is important for your question 3, you look at handling of animals. How do you handle animals? And exam guideline, it says which reasons or what reasons must you look at when you want to handle animals. So which equipment? You want a rope? Do you want which facilities? We talk of feeding pens, or we talk of facilities to handle the animals. You want to administer medication to an animal. You have to handle the animal, but which facility are you going to use? Are you going to use a crash, or are you going to use a cute? Then design features. How must these facilities be designed? How must be floors? The floors will always say that they must not be slippery, because the animals, they will fall and break their legs, isn't it? We also look at tools and equipment that you must use, and how animals, they behave, animal behavior when you handle them. When you approach the animal from the back, what happens? When you approach the animal from the side. So we'll be looking at those things. Animal diseases. Animal diseases is a topic which is supposed to have its own question, but it is included in question 3. That's why you have a lot in question 3. So with animal diseases, you must know which diseases are we talking about. If I can remind you, we talk of viral disease, we talk of bacterial disease, we talk of protozoan diseases, we also talk of fungal diseases. So you must know those types of diseases. You must know their examples. What are viral diseases? If we talk of rabies, is it a viral disease or is it a bacterial disease? If we talk of a foot and mouth disease, what type of a disease is that? And what symptoms? And how can you control it? So as it is stipulated on page 16 of your exam guideline, it is important to know which diseases to look at, which diseases to prepare, which types, and what are the examples. And then the last part of question 3, we look at the parasites. We know that we have 2 types of parasites, the endoparasites and ectoparasites. So you must know the type of parasites and their examples. As we indicated on the diseases, the examples are important. As it is also indicated or stipulated in the exam guideline on page 16. And I hope all of you learners, you have the exam guideline, because you cannot write the exams without knowing what is expected. Let's continue. Question 3, as I was talking about animal diseases. Types of diseases I indicated. You have the viral with the examples. We have the bacterial, with the examples. We have the protozoan disease. You also have the fungal diseases. So you are given which examples must you prepare for your exams. You are also given the examples of bacterial diseases. You are given the examples for protozoan diseases. You are also given the examples for the fungal diseases. So which aspects, when you are looking at these diseases, you must look at the type of animal. Which animal can be infected by swine flu, for example? It is a viral disease, but it cannot affect all animals. Swine flu will only find in pigs. You cannot talk about swine flu in chicken, for example. So you must know the type of an animal which is affected by a specific type of a disease. How is it transmitted? For example, if you talk of rabies, the rabies, we know that is through animal bite or through saliva. That's how it can be transmitted. We look at the symptoms. How can you tell that this animal has this disease? So what are you looking at? If you talk of foot and mouth disease, we look at blisters in the mouth, we look at blisters under the feet, and so on. So how are you going to control? You are expected to know it for your exams, ne? Then you look at the preventative measures. For your animal not to have that specific disease, what must you do? It's part of exam. And economical implication, and other books will talk of financial implications. What financial or economical implications they cause to the farmer. Remember, you have to buy medicine, you have to vaccinate your animals. There's a lot money spent on economic implications, if I can say so. And the role of state. Role of state. What is the role of government? State, we're talking of government. Because in your exam, they may not talk about the state, they will refer to it as government. What is the role of government in preventing diseases? Even if you are in the Northern Cape, you know that in the KZN there is a disease, there is a swine flu. So the farmers in the Northern Cape, they must be alerted, they must know that is the role of government, the awareness. We are still on question 3. Types of parasites. Types of parasites, we are looking at 2, the internal and external. But this internal will refer to it as internal. Internal parasite, we refer to them as endoparasites. Endo means inside, internal, endoparasite. And external parasites, we refer to them as ectoparasites. Can you see that? Endo means inside, it means internal. Ecto means external, which means outside. There are those parasites that they will harm animals outside. That's why we refer to them as external parasites. The endoparasites, they are invisible. We'll see them inside. You cannot tell an animal walking there that it has an internal parasite until you have to examine the animal. Remember the reasons of handling the farm animals. So which aspects must you look at as you are preparing for your exams? If you are dealing with internal parasites, which aspects must you look at? What do you mean by external parasite? If you start with external. Examples of external parasites. What are those examples of external parasites? If you talk of mosquitoes, are they internal or external? Okay. Then life cycles. With the life cycles, we'll be dealing with the single host, 2 host, 3 host ticks. Ticks, we are talking of ticks. It already tells you that it is an external parasite. How do you control them? How do you prevent? There's a difference between controlling and preventing. You control what is there, you prevent something not to happen. Economic implications, as I indicated before, the role of the farmer in controlling external parasites. Same applies with internal parasites. You must know what do you mean by internal parasites. You must know the groups of these parasites, which is the same as the examples. So we use different terms. Don't get confused, learners. So the life cycles, you must also look at the life cycles of internal parasites. You must look at the symptoms. How will you know that your animal has got a tapeworm? Okay? Which symptoms are you going to look at? Preventative and control measures, remember I said they are different. Financial implications, which I said is the same as financial or economical implications that they cause. The role of farmer in controlling the parasites. Don't be confused. The examiner may ask you about the role of a farmer. And previously we talked about the role of state. It is also important. What governments must do and what farmers must do. Okay. Then let's look at question 4, which is our last question on section B, which is out of 35 marks, which is animal reproduction. So what is expected on animal reproduction? In animal reproduction, you are expected to know the 2 diagrams. Diagrams about what? About the reproductive system of a bull, a reproductive system of a cow. So you must know those diagrams. So by knowing a structure, it's when you know how to label it. In agricultural science, you are not going to be asked to draw the structure, digestive or reproductive system. You're not going to be asked. You are going to be given those structures, then you are expected to label them. Hence, it says you must be able to identify the parts. You must label that there are testes, and you must label that there is a prostate, there is a what? There is a corpus gland. You must know the parts. What do they do? The functions. They are important. By knowing the part, you must also know what does it do. Let's look at the next one. What is expected of you from this animal reproduction? You must know the reproductive process. There's a lot. So we refer to them as reproductive techniques or reproductive processes. You must know the formation of gametes. Once we talk of gametes, we talk about gametes in cows, we talk about gametes in bulls. So which means you need to look at how are they formed. In cows, we'll be looking at oogenesis. Genesis, remember, it means creation. It means formation. So we must look at oogenesis. How are the female gametes formed? In bulls, we have to look at spermatogenesis. How sperms are formed. Where are they formed? What do they do? Okay. Then we have to look at the oestrus cycle. Oestrus cycle is a main topic because it deals with females. We must know in oestrus cycle, you must know the phases. And oestrus cycle deals with four phases, which you also refer to it as 4 stages. So it is not complete oestrus cycle if you don't know the 4 hormones. And what do these hormones do? It is important to know their functions. You are expected to know the signs of this oestrus. How will you tell that this cow is on oestrus? When it is on oestrus, which hormones are active? And then when they are active on that particular stage, what is expected from the animal? So it is important. There are a lot of marks when it comes to oestrus cycle. Then mating. When is the right time for mating? Mating, it can be natural, it can be artificial. If you look at the next one, artificial insemination, we refer to it as AI. So there is no bull, there is only a cow. But you need the sperm or you need the semen from the bull for that artificial insemination. And then once artificial insemination is done, remember it is going to be used artificial insemination if the natural way is not working well. Then we look at fertilization. The sperm cell and the egg cell, they must fuse in order to fertilize. We'll look, once the egg cell is fertilized, we'll be talking of pregnancy. The animal will be pregnant. And once it is pregnant, you must know the signs when it is pregnant. You must know the stages of pregnancy. You must know which hormones are active when an animal is pregnant. Then when it is pregnant, we're expecting it to give birth. That's why we'll be looking at parturition. Parturition is also known as birth. How will you see that this animal is about to give birth? So the signs of an animal that is about to give birth will be similar to the animal when it is on oestrus, okay? But not all of them are similar. So there are similarities when a cow is on oestrus and when an animal is about to give birth. And then the last part of question 4 is lactation. The animal has given birth and it's supposed to feed its young one. Then we talk of lactation. Lactation, we talk of milk. What do we call the milk which is produced in the first 3 days? What are the characteristics of that? And what does it do? The functions are important at all times. You don't just know for the sake of knowing. If you know that there is colostrum, which is the first milk produced, therefore you are expected to also know what role is it playing? Why is it important to an animal? And that is all that is expected of you on this paper 1. Then on the next topics, we'll be looking at paper 2. But now I want us to move with paper 1, whereby we look at these 4 topics. And which skills are you going to be assessed in this paper 1? Your paper 1 is incomplete if it does not have a graph. But it depends which graph will you be asked to work on. It can be a bar graph or a line graph or a histogram or a pie chart. And there is a problem when it comes to a bar graph and a histogram. A bar graph, you need to know that a bar graph, it has got spaces in between, whereas a histogram, it does not have spaces in between. You need to know that. Okay, then we need to look at the skills to be assessed, the drawing of the graph, the what is expected on the graph, which criteria will be used when you draw a graph. You must look at, you are expected to know that when you draw a graph is 6 marks at all times. Is 6 marks. With these 6 marks is made up of the correct heading. It's not just a heading when you write a line graph or a bar graph. Your heading must have both variables as it is indicated. Both variables must be visible. If you are talking about the price and at the same time you are talking about the price and you are also talking about the quantities of oranges that you must buy, those are the variables. You look at quantities at the same time you look at the price. All right, so you look at the heading with both variables. Secondly, you must respond to the question. If the question says you must draw a line graph, draw line graph. If it is a bar, draw bar graph. So it is important to know the correct type of a graph. So you must use the correct units. Remember, where are you going to get these units? The units will be in the table that has got the information that you're going to use when you plot a graph. So you are not going to think about which units. You use what you are given. Okay? And you are expected to label your y-axis and your x-axis. You label with calibration. When you talk of calibration, you're talking of scaling. You don't write 1, 3, 7, 5, 10. We look at, if you know that your figures are going to be 5, it must be 5, 10, 15, 20. Okay? So same applies in your y-axis and also in your x-axis. So the plotting, at least 80% of them, they must be correct. And previously we're talking of accuracy for your 6th mark. If all the criteria that are assessed are correct, so the 6th one is about the accuracy. Is everything correct? Are all the bars, if it is a bar graph, is it plotted correctly or not? And then we also continue with the skills. As we were dealing with the graph, also expect that sometimes you'll be given a graph, then you have to convert it into a table, which means you have to give the information that was used in order to plot that graph. Hence, we are talking about the completing of a table. So you are converting a graph that will be well plotted for you. Then you are expected to provide a table with the data that is required. Then another skill that you must expect to be assessed on is about answering. How do you answer questions? Remember, I said in your multiple choice questions, that MCQs means multiple choice questions. Your 1.1, you write only the letter, not the statement. Your 1.2, you are matching columns. And your 1.3, you give the correct term. And your 1.4, you replace only the underlined term and you don't rewrite the question or the statement provided. You are also expected to interpret the graph that you drawn, or also the calculations that you have calculated. You're expected to give an interpretation or implication. Which implication does it have? So the graph identify the specific aspects in a graph. You must be able to deduce the trends. It is important. You don't just draw a graph. You are expected to answer questions based on the graph that you have drawn. So you must check the trend from this point up to this point. What happens? Is the temperature increasing or is the temperature decreasing? So you need to look at that trend from which area to which area. So that range is important. So the trend you need to look at in any graph. That's why you'll find some other graphs, they show the fluctuations. And then the other one, you must be able to recommend. If you see it's not increasing, it decreases. Therefore, what can you recommend to that farmer? Remember now, as you are being assessed in your exams, you are advising farmers. What can they do? You also expect to interpret extracts that will be given. You must read with understanding. You are going to be given the scenarios. You are going to be given the case studies about what farmers do outside there. So you have to apply the knowledge that you learned in class in the outside world. And the last part, skills that you are assessed. I mentioned already that you have 5 calculations that are expected from you. Then we'll talk about how many marks each. Then you must be able to convert. We know that farmers, we deal with hectares, we deal with tons, we deal with kilograms, we deal with milliliters and many units that you can think of. So how do you convert tons into kilograms? Or how do you convert kilograms into hectares or into tons? Okay, so that's what is expected of you when you are preparing for your paper 1. Best of luck for your exams as you are preparing. The next presentation will deal in details with paper 1. What is the content for question 2? What is the content for question 3? What is the content for question 4? Thank you for watching the lesson.